Okay, can you guys see the keynote okay? Yeah, cool. All right, so tonight's lesson is an intro to Git. Oh, and actually one thing that I do want to show before we get into that is I want to be better about remembering to do this every day, but I want to go through the learning objectives for today, okay? So these are sort of the, because we're going to go through a lot of stuff, but these are going to be the main things that I want to be like your takeaway lessons from today, okay? So at the end of this, you should be able to understand and explain version control, configure a Git identity and default editor on a computer, create a fork on GitHub, clone a remote Git repository, commit changes and write good commit messages, push changes, and then create a pull request on GitHub. Okay, so those are our takeaways for today. And we'll circle back around at the end of class to make sure that we feel good about all of those. Okay, sorry, let me move the PowerPoint back now. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Git. So Git is primarily what we use for version control. Okay, so a lot of you in school growing up, you know, you maybe had like Microsoft Word, and your teacher would say like, hey, like as you go through the writing process, as you get to your final draft, I want you to save like a rough draft and like a second rough draft and a third rough draft and then like a almost final draft and then your final draft. And you would have like your desktop that was just full of like a million documents, right? And you were just trying to come up with names for each one that would help you know like which draft is which. And so that was in a way some form of version control, right? As you were growing up and doing that, you had your different versions that were like snapshots of your paper that you were writing at any given time, okay? Well, similarly, when it comes to programming and using Git, the concept is very similar. That when we are using Git, it is a form of version control that allows us to take snapshots of our code at a given point in time. And so that if we need to ever go back to some sort of commit or go back to a previous version, it's really easy to like rewind back to a certain commit or to a certain draft, I guess you could say. Okay, so I'm not really going to talk about the history of Git because it's not that important. But Git is the most widely used among iOS developers. Okay, so this is like the most common form of version control as an iOS engineer. Okay, so do we all understand the concept of like snapshotting like versions of your code? Does that make sense? When I say version control, does that confuse anyone?
When you say snapshotting, are you just referring to committing?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about distributed version control. Okay. So not only is it really nice for us to be able to make commits or to take snapshots of our code at any given point because it's easy to rewind back and to see the changes that we've made. But it's also essential that we use version control when working with other people, okay? Because at least here your time at Lambda initially, you're going to be working on a lot of projects by yourself, and you'll be, you know, doing regular commits, and you'll have that version history. But then when you get out into the real world, you're going to be working on a project that is just huge, right? And it has a lot of developers who are working on it at the same time. Okay, and so that we don't run into issues, so that we can work on the same project at the same time, we need to have distributed version control. Okay, so here in our example, we've got developer Steve and then developer Ada. Okay, so both of them work for, let's say they work for like Snapchat. Okay, and so Snapchat has a remote repository, right? They've got like, we'll say that the remote repository is saved on GitHub, okay? But Steve and Ada both work for Snapchat, and they're both expected to work on different features, okay? So Steve, what he's going to do is he's going to create a copy of the Snapchat repo on his computer. And then Ada is going to also make a copy of the remote repository on her computer. And so Steve and Ada both have local copies of the same remote repository. Okay? Questions about that? About a remote repository versus a local repository?
What exactly is a repository?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a repository is pretty much just a folder that's full of a bunch of files, and those files usually contain code or other things necessary in order to make your project work. And so a repository, though, when we create like a Git repository, not only does it contain all of those files, but it also contains like a history of those files over time, when they were added, when certain lines of code were added to each of them. So a repository just keeps like a running history of a given file.
Johnny, would a repository be the same thing as a version control then? Or am I misunderstanding what a version control is?
So version control is the process of like committing to a repository, but a repository is like actually like the project or group of files itself.
Okay, good to go.
Yeah, so version control is interacting with those files using Git, but the files themselves and the entire project are part of a repository.
Does that ever get complicated when you have people working on their own local versions of it, and they might be working on the same file?
Yes, yeah, that can often be an issue, and so we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, that is a problem that people will often run into when working on a project together. Is they'll have conflicts where they've both been working on the same file, and then when they both tried to push their changes to the remote repository, the remote doesn't know like which changes it should accept because both developers are trying to work on the same thing. So we'll talk about how to manage that later. But yeah, that is a potential downfall with distributed version control.
So the remote repository is like actually what's that, or in this example, what's in Snapchat's their stuff. So the local repository is that what's like on my computer, or?
Correct. Yeah. So when you say that you have a local repository that's from a remote, you just simply have a copy on your computer of the remote repository. So just like a local version to yourself. So any changes that you make locally aren't necessarily going to be changed on the remote repository until you push those changes up to it. Okay, does that make sense? So really there, in this little triangle here, there are 3 different copies of a repository. Okay, Steve has one on his computer. Then there's one up on GitHub, which is the remote repository. And then Ada has another copy on her computer. Okay, so there's kind of 3 sources of that code, right? But ultimately we want all of them to like lead back to this same single source, which will be the remote repository. Okay, I think if I move on, it will become clearer. We'll go through some examples and some animations here. So, okay, so one awesome part of, like I said, of using Git and using version control is you have what's called a Git history, right? And I wish my mouse would, where is my mouse? Yeah, I cannot get my mouse to show on this screen. But over to the left, we have like our initial commit, which is just like the starting point of our project. Okay, and then as a developer, I can go in, I can add features, I can fix bugs and whatnot, and then I can make commits each time I do these things so that I sort of get a running history of my project over time. Okay, and at the same time, I can create branches off of like a main branch and work on other features there and then merge them back into my main branch, okay? And so this is where this idea of have multiple people working on one project is going to come in handy. Is being able to branch off of our main branch, work on a feature, and then merge those changes back in. But it'll be more helpful with some animation. So the first thing that oh yeah, go ahead.
Can we go back to that other slide real quick?
Sure.
So when you say you can branch off into other pieces of code, are you saying like basically you can separate the parts of your code into different commits? Or is it all the same code in like I guess I'm not completely understanding.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll get into that, but it's all the same code. So imagine that like you have like a master branch that is sort of always like a good version of your app, right? Like you're adding features, but you don't want to screw up the app by like accidentally like committing a bug, right? So what you'd want to do is you'd want to branch off of the main, like of your master branch, work on your changes, get them to work, and then merge those back into the master branch, right? So we're always going to have sort of one branch that is like working and clean and good, and usually we're going to branch off of that as we work on things and then merge those changes in. But it'll make more sense as we go through this.
Just a quick question. So jumping in, when you branch off and then you merge it back in, presumably, I mean, because as we know, mistakes sometimes don't show up until later. So presumably the version control would let you revert back to the branch that was working?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Revert back to a previous commit where you have merged that branch. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about this first method this first, I guess, functionality that you should know is called cloning. Okay. So cloning, when we do a get clone on our computer, it is simply cloning a remote repository to your local system via a get clone on the terminal. Okay, inside of terminal, we'll just do get clone and then put like a GitHub URL in, and that will clone the remote repository to our local system, right? So that we have it on our computer, okay? So that's a get clone. Okay, so next, now that we've got like a local repository, I can open it up, or now that I've cloned down the remote repository and I have it locally, I can open it up and I can start typing lines of code, okay? So as I'm writing lines of code, as I'm fixing bugs or working on features, I'm going to be making what are called commits, okay? So again, it's this idea of I'm writing all of this code and then I want to save it to my repository. It's almost a form of saving, but I get like a save history, okay? So when I do a git commit, it's going to push those changes to my local repository, okay?
So it's kind of like updating your computer or like backing up your computer.
Sure, yeah, just taking like a snapshot at any given time of, okay, if I want to revert back to what my code looked like 10 minutes ago, I can do that because I committed 10 minutes ago, and so on and so forth. Okay, so when we make changes and we commit them, those changes themselves have been committed or saved to our local repository, okay? So if I want to get those changes up to the remote repository so that my friend Ada has them, I need to push them up to the remote, okay? So I've got them locally, I've committed the changes, and then I'm going to do a git push and push those changes up to the remote repository, okay? Well, so that Ada has all of the changes that I've been working on, what she needs to do is she already has a local copy on her computer that's connected to the remote repository, but she needs to pull my changes down. Okay, so remember there's push and there's pull. So push is pushing them up to the remote, pull is pulling them down from the remote. Okay, so now that I've pushed my changes up to a remote repository, Ada is going to do a get pull and pull those changes down to her local repository. Okay, so now she has all of the changes that I made on my computer. okay? So again, this isn't as fancy as like a Google Doc where we're literally both typing at the same time and we can see each other's changes, right? Because, you know, maybe we are working on our projects offline or we're on an airplane or whatnot. We need to work on those changes locally, and then when we get internet connection, we just simply need to push them back up to the remote repository. But in order to have each other's changes, we're going to need to pull their changes down after they've pushed up. Okay, questions up to this point? Any questions about pushing and pulling?
So you mentioned that Ada will pull the request, pull the information down. Is that what a pull request is? Or is that,
No, we'll talk about pull requests later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Johnny, what's the difference between a clone and branching a repository? Is it the same thing?
So clone is just getting a repository on your computer locally. It's just creating a copy of the remote repository on your computer.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you only do a get clone once.
Okay. And what about branching? Are we going to touch that a little bit later?
We'll talk about branching later.
Oh.
Yeah, no, sorry, I shouldn't have talked about branching. I realized I had that graphic in there, but don't worry about branching yet. Just worry about get clone, get pull, and get push are the main three things that you should know right up to this point.
I have a question.
Okay.
So when I push changes, in order for her to get those changes, she needs to pull it, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So say you've been away from a repository for a while. If you were to get clone, would you get all of the files that you've missed? Or would you just get pull for that and it would do the same thing?
Yeah, you would only do a get pull. Remember, a get clone is just once, just to get the repository on your computer. But yeah, if you haven't, but then if you've cloned the repository and then you haven't like touched it or done anything with it for a few months, you still have the project as it was when you cloned it, but then you just need to make sure you have the latest changes via a get pull. So you're just going to pull those changes down. So the get clone sort of creates that connection between the remote and the local. And so once that connection's made, you don't need to do anything else with get clone. All you need to do is just get pull, right? That stream has already been set up to push and pull.
So if I'm working on a project with someone else and we're working on our little sections, and do I need to pull before I push my changes or do that before or after?
Yeah, so it depends what's happened to the repository, what's happened to the remote repository since the last time that you pulled, right? So if your friend has pushed up changes and then you try to push up changes and they're conflicting changes, then you're going to get to what's called a merge conflict, right? Or it can't push the changes up because you don't have the latest changes that your friend already made. So sometimes, assuming your friend has already pushed changes up, you'll need to pull their changes down, merge them with your changes, and then push all of the changes up, including the ones that you just made.
Okay.
So typically that would only be an issue if you're both working on the same section of code. I mean, ideally, you're not going to be working the same section. You're going to be breaking it off so you don't have that conflict.
Correct. Yeah, in an ideal world. Unfortunately, you can't always avoid it. Okay, questions about get clone, get push, and get pull? Are those three clear? Okay, so let's talk about, okay, so Ada pulls down my changes. Okay, so now we're going to talk about merging, okay? So on my computer, I make a bunch of changes, I commit them, okay? I do a get push, okay? Ada, she makes a bunch of changes. She tries to do a get push. But then we get an error that says failed to push some refs to repo.get. which changes to accept, right? And that's where we sort of have to rely on the human element of we, the developers, have to handle merge conflicts. It's not up to the remote repository to decide whose changes to keep, okay? So that it's not even gonna let Ada push her changes up because there is a conflict, right? And it's saying, I can't accept those changes because they're in conflict with some other code that you don't have, okay? So what needs to happen here is I make my changes, I push them to the remote, okay? Ada, she makes some changes, but then she also pulls my changes down, okay? And then on her local repository, she'll deal with any merge conflicts that there may be, okay? And she'll merge those into her local repository. So she deals with any conflicts that there may have been. She merges them together. And then she pushes all of the code back up to the remote. Okay?
So is it a good rule of thumb then that before you push, you should always pull?
Well, so it's going to stop. It will let you know if you're able to push or not, right?
Okay.
If you try to push, it's going to tell you, hey, you can't do that. And then you'll know that you need to pull first.
Okay, fair enough.
Johnny, is it because it knows you don't have the latest version?
Well, because you'll try to push your changes up and then it will notice like, hey, I have a bunch of code that you don't have, but that you didn't delete. So it means that like you don't have the latest version. So then it will block you from being able to push your changes up.
So does that make things a little bit complicated? Like if you, I'm just trying to understand, if you push your code up, and then it tells you to pull it back down, like what if you don't understand, like how are you supposed to know exactly what you're looking at when you pull it back down? Like, and what changes were made, and like, what if it's a lot of code? Like you just sit there and go through it all, or is there a way to?
Yeah, when you're dealing with a merge conflict and you do have to resolve those on your local repository, sometimes you have to like hop on the phone with the person that you're working with and say, hey, like, why did you remove this? Like, I actually need this. Like, you will have to have like a conversation about those changes if it's confused. Sometimes merge conflicts, it makes sense that you can look at their code and say, oh, okay, I realize why they did it that way. I'm going to merge their changes in with mine and whatnot. But sometimes it does require talking to the person who made those changes and pushed them up and figuring out, hey, which of this stuff do we need to keep versus which of this stuff can I override with my code? So.
Don't you typically have a like a Word document or something that kind of goes along with the commit that explains the changes you put, effectively like a track changes type thing, just for that purpose?
So you could, so a good thing to do would be to like add documentation, or like to like type documentation directly into the Xcode project and say, hey, this function is doing this, or we need to do this, so that it's clear to another developer as they pull it down. But you can also like leave notes when you, and we'll talk about pull requests a little bit later, but you can also leave notes in like a pull request that explain what you're needing to do or trying to do. So different teams have different ways of managing that. Okay. Is this a, I think this is just the same animation that I already showed you. Maybe I have it in here twice. Okay, cool. All right, so now we've got this idea of branching, okay? So whenever you clone a repository from GitHub, it's going to be defaulted to the master branch, okay? The master branch. And so usually the master branch is where like the actual functioning part of the app lives. And you want to make sure that the master branch is always like in a good form, in good condition, okay? And so one thing that you can do in order to not mess up the master branch is you can check out a new branch, okay? So here's this idea. You've got the master branch, okay, which again, I always want it to be like a good branch in case I have to like push any hot fixes or whatnot. All of that's going to come from the master branch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a completely separate branch off of the master branch to work on some sort of feature, okay? So maybe I'm working on adding Siri shortcut support to my application, okay? Well, that could take me 2 weeks to do. And so I don't want to be like committing half features to the master branch because say during that 2 weeks, we have to push a hotfix for our app out and it sort of has half like broken code on that master branch, okay? That wouldn't be good, right? And so this idea of branching is that we can have a completely separate branch from the master branch in order to work and fully develop a feature and then merge that branch back into the master. So like sort of graft it back into the master branch with all of like the final changes, okay? So we generally use a get checkout in order to check out like individual branches for us to work on different features and whatnot. And that way we leave our master branch alone until our feature has been fully developed and is ready to be sort of grafted back into the master branch.
So a branch is kind of like a quarantine space where you can experiment with the.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, where you can make commits, but the commits aren't being made directly on the master. They're being made to your branch itself. Yeah.
Does it put any kind of placeholder in the master branch to kind of show that you've pulled a branch off there, or it doesn't really reflect that on the master?
So when you check out a new branch, it will have all of the version history up until the point that you checked it out. And then all of the changes that you make thereafter will be part of just that branch's get history. But then as soon as you merge that branch back into the master, it will add that history into the master as well. Okay. Okay, we get it. I didn't make this slide deck, so some of these slides I don't find to be like super helpful. I don't want to make it too confusing, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, so this is showing us where they're pushing, pulling, and merging it?
Yeah, sort of a more detailed layout.
That's actually really cool.
So let's get back to this slide. Okay, so again, this is a full review. So this top piece is the remote repository, okay? The bottom left piece is my local repository, okay? And then the bottom right one is Ada's local repository, okay? So each of us have pulled the initial commit and the added a feature commits down, okay? So I'm gonna fix a bug, okay? So I fix a bug and I push those changes up, okay? So Ada, while I fixed a bug, Ada is here and she's working on adding a new feature like on a different branch, okay? And she pulls my changes down, okay? And so she gets the fixed bug that I made on my computer, okay? And then she merges my changes into hers, right? So now her local repository has the bug fix that I made, but also her feature, okay? And so now in order to get all of those back up to the remote, she does a merge, and then she pushes those changes back up, okay? And I'll share this slide deck with you guys after class if you want to go through all this stuff again.
That's actually super helpful.
Cool, good, I'm glad. I never know how helpful keynote presentations are, but hopefully this helps you visualize what's going on.
Well, most of the time PowerPoints will put you to sleep.
That's why we got some animations. Okay, I feel like I have that same animation like a few times. Okay, cool. That's all I'm gonna do with the keynote at this point. Okay, so let's spend about a half an hour, so it's about time for a break. I'm gonna give you guys 3 minutes. And then we'll get into configuring Git on your computers thereafter.
Johnny, I just want you to know that you speak Chinese half the time.
That sounds like a bad thing.
And no, it just means I have to learn how to understand Chinese.
Yeah, but I don't want to be speaking Chinese. I want to make sure you guys are understanding me. That's my responsibility. All right, guys, come on back. Come on back.
No, don't misunderstand. I do understand the majority of what you talk about.
Yeah, no, I know. There's a lot of lingo that you guys will come to understand for sure.
That's just all brand new still.
Yeah. All right. All right. Well, I'm going to share a GitHub repository with you guys to do some Git setup. Okay. So let's go ahead and open that up, and then we're going to go through it together. Okay. And hopefully this doesn't take too long. I found that in getting people set up with Git, like people's computers and whatnot are going to have issues or problems, or we're going to have to sort of stop and pause and have a student share their screen and whatnot. So be patient during this part. We only have to do it once, but it does tend to get a little bit confusing. But then once it's set up, it's all set up and we don't need to worry about it anymore, okay? So let's go ahead and let's open up that Git setup repo here. Okay, and so here are some installation instructions, okay? So again, follow along with me. We're doing this together, okay? So we're gonna go to this github.com Lambda School iOS Git setup, Okay. So I've got that here. Git documentation and guides. Okay. Which I guess, oh, that's funny. It's like a loop, an everlasting loop. We're already here. Okay. So let's go ahead then, and we want to clone or download. Okay, so we can do either one. Because we haven't used terminal yet, let's go ahead and just download for now. Okay, so we're going to download the zip. So I'm going to go up to this green button here where it says clone or download. Okay, and we're going to click on download zip. Okay, so that should download it and put it in your downloads folder. Okay, so I've got my downloads down here in the dock, but if you don't have that, I'd highly recommend putting it there because you access downloads quite a bit. So if you open up a Finder window, you should see downloads as one of these options in this left column. Okay. And so if you don't currently have downloads somewhere down here in your dock, if you just click here and drag, it will allow you to drop it down into your dock. So you might want to do that because it's helpful to have easy access to it. Okay, so once you've got your downloads, let's go ahead and open the folder that we just downloaded. Okay, so iOS git setup master here. Okay, and then we're going to leave this to the side, and we're going to go to this next step. Okay, so on Zoom, you have like a little emoji thing that you can press that like raises your hand. When you're caught up to this point, let's have you raise your little Zoom hand so that I know that you
Once you unzip the folder, what did you press after that?
Yeah, so we just want to open it up. So like in Finder, just have the folder open for now.
Gotcha.
So how do we raise the Zoom hand?
There should be
Go to
on
participants and then
Lower
at the
hand.
bottom left hand side, you'll see raise hand.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to download TextMate. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on this link, this macromates.com. Okay, and then here's a button to download TextMate 2.0. Okay, so go ahead and click on that, and then we'll hit allow, and that will go to our downloads folder. Okay, so you should see a zip for TextMate in your downloads folder now. So if you click it, it will unzip it. Okay, and so TextMate, the app icon is like a pink flower. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to add that to our applications folder. Okay, to make it one of our standard applications. So click on that download that you have now, and you're just going to drag it here to applications. Okay, and now you see that you have TextMate as part of your applications. Okay, everyone with me thus far? Doug?
Not yet.
Is it still downloading?
My computer's actually moving just a tad bit slow.
Okay, all right, we'll wait a sec.
I don't know if it's the Zoom call slowing down my internet or what, but the page just is not loading.
Okay. All right, we'll give it another minute or so. For those of you that are caught up, and if you want to start doing some of these other steps yourself, you can start that and then we'll go through it together.
Is TextMate something we want to have locked on our dock?
Not necessarily, no. It's more so for terminal. Terminal will open it as needed. Okay.
Yeah, Johnny, I don't know what's going on. My Internet Explorer is like frozen right now. Or sorry, Google Chrome, not.
Okay, I was going to
Internet
say, if
Explorer.
you're using Internet Explorer, I'm not surprised.
There's your problem.
Oh, there we go. Nope, there we go. There we go. There we go.
So it worked for you now? You good?
I will be in a second.
Okay. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's open up TextMate. Now that it's part of our applications, you can go ahead and hit open here. Okay, so here I've got TextMate. Okay, and then we want to go up to the TextMate main menu, and then we're going to click on Preferences here. Okay, to open up our TextMate preferences. Okay, so you should see this window now. Okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on the Terminal tab. Okay. And then we want to click Install. Let's see. Okay, so then we'll hit Install there. Okay, so now shell support has been installed. Okay, so the reason we're doing this, oh, go ahead.
Hey, this is what me and Aaron were talking about earlier. I can't download this. I'm one of the only students here that does not have a Mac yet.
Ah, okay. That's right. Okay, well, you'll have these instructions to look at once you have a Mac. Okay, so our shell support has been installed. Okay, and so the reason that we're doing this all is because it allows us to use TextMate to edit our Git commits and other interactive features without needing to learn the ins and outs of Vim, which Vim is a giant pain. Okay, so it's just a lot easier to do it on this regular old text editor. So that's why we're doing this. Okay, so now let's go ahead and verify that it works. So we're going to open up Terminal. Okay, so an easy way to find Terminal is you can go to your applications folder, or if you press Command Spacebar, it will bring up like your Spotlight search. Go ahead and search for Terminal. Okay, and once you've got Terminal open, I would recommend having Terminal as part of your doc. So you're going to go ahead and right-click go to options, and then make sure that keep in dock is checked so that it always stays in your dock, even if you force quit terminal.
Hey Johnny, where'd you click that for that option to keep it on our dock?
So right click on the terminal icon, then go to options, keep in dock.
Gotcha.
Okay, so don't pay too much attention to like, hey, my terminal doesn't look the same as yours. That's because I'm using a different shell than you. So I'm using a shell that's called fish, which just does a little bit more like color, like more like syntax highlighting, and among other features that are sort of nice and that I like. You're welcome to use fish as your shell for terminal if you want. I can send you some instructions on how to install that on your computer if you want. Most of you are either using bash or ZSH. Probably the majority ZSH because that's sort of the default shell on Catalina. Although I realize probably not all of you are on Catalina, so maybe some of you still are using bash. That's okay. All of the stuff that we're going to be doing today can be solved with any of those shells. So don't fret too much if like it doesn't look exactly the same as mine. That's just because we're using different shells. So okay, so we want to verify that it works. So let's go ahead and open up terminal. Okay, and then let's go ahead and type in mate period. Okay, so TextMate would like to access files in your desktop folder. We'll go ahead and say okay. And then it should have brought up TextMate here. Okay, if yours is working, some of you are already raising your little Zoom hand. Go ahead and lower it and then re-raise it if yours is working.
Wait, how to open the folders again?
How to get TextMate open or what?
No, I don't have on the right side. I don't have open the desktop.
Do you have terminal open?
Yeah.
Okay. So in terminal, to open up TextMate, you're just going to type in mate space period.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Let me make that bigger. That's like really teeny. Here we go. All right, we good to move on?
Actually, no. Sorry, Johnny. Mine's not working for some reason. I just put in mate. Like I'm bringing up the terminal. I do have bash on, but I'm getting like this weird message on there I've never seen before. But mine doesn't have like the desktop on the terminal for some reason.
Okay, that's okay. This is part of my shell.
Okay.
That's okay if you can't see this. Is it opening up TextMate when you do mate space period?
Let's see. Yeah. Space period. Actually, yeah, I think it's just gonna. My bad. I didn't put that space.
Okay. Yeah, don't pay attention to this. This is part of my shell. So yours is gonna look different. Okay, all right, let's move on to the next part. Okay, so next we want to prep our git config file. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the files that we downloaded from the GitHub repository. Okay, so back in our Finder window, we put it off to the side. You can just open it up from your downloads as well, but it's the iOS git setup master file. Okay, So let's go ahead and let's click on our git config file. Okay. Okay, and mine just defaulted to open up to text edit. Okay, so we've got the git config file open here. Okay, so now that we've got that open, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put where it says name here. Let's see if I can make that bigger here. Okay, so your name here, let's go ahead and replace that. And let's put in your name. Okay, don't put my name, put your name. Okay, and then in the email, let's go ahead and have you put your email.
Hey, Johnny, what if we followed along with the videos for the prepare and already did something like this?
What was that?
The videos for the prepare before class.
Oh,
what if we
okay.
followed along with that for the git config.
Oh, okay.
Fix it up.
Perfect. Cool. Then yeah, you're ahead of us for sure. Some people may not have had a chance to watch the video though, so we'll just go through it just to make sure everyone's good. But awesome.
And Johnny, for some reason, it's not letting me open up the git config. It keeps telling me that it's it can't open it because it's an unidentified developer.
Okay. Yeah, so let's go ahead and let's open up your system preferences. Okay, and again, you can find that if you just search system preferences, command space, system preferences. You should see this window. And then we're going to go to security and privacy, okay, which is this like little house with a combination on it. And mine doesn't say it, but on yours, there should be a line, a message that says git config was blocked from opening.
It's under general.
Oh, is it in the general?
It showed up just below the allow apps downloaded from section on the bottom there.
Yeah.
And then there was a button.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Cool.
Yeah, I found it. Thank you.
Yeah, and then you should be able to open it now.
And can you go over what you just did a couple seconds ago, like what I was supposed to type in for the git?
Yeah, so in that git config file, just replace, this used to say your name here and your email here. So just put your name and your email address there.
So when I open that, it runs through the processes and then it says process completed and I can't update. No.
You try to open the git config file?
I opened it and then it opened up and just ran through everything. And then it said process complete at the bottom. And I didn't get a chance to put or change any of that information.
Yeah, same here.
That's weird. What you could probably do is, instead of just opening it directly, click and drag it and like drag it to TextMate. And then it should open it up. Hopefully.
Yeah, that's what I had to do actually. I just dragged it into my TextMate window and it let me make changes.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool.
And does this need to be verbatim what we put into GitHub as far as our information goes?
I believe so. Yes. I think at least the email address. I'm not sure if the name might be able to be different.
I just wasn't sure if I put down Zach or Zachary or my middle name.
Yeah, no, I don't. I'm not entirely sure. I guess we'll see. All right. So just a few steps left here. So we want to change the short username on line 10 to be our computer's short username. Let's see, let's open up text edit here. Yeah, so right here, I believe my computer short username is, actually I need to check. Okay, so mine is Johnny Hicks. I'm trying to think if there's an easier way for you to find that besides using terminal. Yeah, so if you open up that same Finder window, it's going to be whatever the name of this home directory is. One that has like a little house directory. So we've got users and then Johnny Hicks here. So that's what we want to put. Text edit, Johnny Hicks.
Hey, Johnny, where did you find that again?
Yeah, so open up the Finder window where we were previously, like that had that folder from our downloads. So if you look down here at the file path, you should see one of the file path things after users will have like a little home directory. That's going to be the name that you want to put in.
I don't have anything like that on the bottom of mine.
Yeah, mine don't have that either.
This bar here isn't showing?
No.
No.
I got mine through just typing in ls into the terminal.
Yeah, by typing ls in terminal, it shows it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can, that's one way to do it for sure. That's interesting that you guys can't see.
There's supposed to be like a shortcut.
Oh, here it is. Here it is, the path bar. So if you have your Finder window open, you should see an option to show or hide the path bar, or if you Command-Shift-P. No, let's see. Did I do that right? Oh no, Option-Shift. Okay, did that work? If you do that?
Yes, yeah, it did for me.
Bar.
Yep, it worked.
Okay, cool.
Where'd you find that, John, for the option again? How you drop down the menu? Is it on the configuration?
Yeah, go to Finder. So you should have Finder selected, and then up in this main toolbar, if you go to View, and then there should be a yours should say Show Path Bar. Mine says Hide Path Bar, but that's because it's showing. So it's actually Option Command P.
And then we put that in the short username, correct?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
If we had it in our iCloud documents, does that change anything? Or would we always still use that same short username?
No. So you're saying your username is part of like iCloud?
No, like for example, I put it back in my downloads folder, so it shows like how yours does. But
Oh,
if you were to drag that master folder into your iCloud documents or somewhere else,
oh,
your name wouldn't show up down there necessarily. It would just say
oh,
iCloud.
yeah, yeah, because it would be a different file path.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and save the file. So just do Command S to save. Okay, so now we're here on step 3. We want to enable hidden files in Finder. Okay. So let's go back to our folder here, the iOS Git Setup Master. Okay. And then we're going to press Shift Command period to enable or disable the hidden files in Finder. Okay. So Shift Command period. Why is that not working? Let's see, mine is not working. Is anybody else's working?
Mine's not either.
Let's get set up master. Why? Shift Command period. Why is mine not working? What? Yeah, I mean, that's definitely what we're supposed to do. Well, that's weird. It's just not doing it like in that directory itself, which seems not right. Let's try this again. Okay, so we might need to navigate back to our home directory. Okay, so navigate to your home directory here. So if you click on the one that has like your computer's short username, then try to do Command Shift period. Okay, and you should see a bunch of files show and hide based on how you toggle it. Okay, is that working for everyone? I'm not really sure why you have to be at the home level to do that, but.
Yeah, it's working for me.
Okay.
Well, I don't even have a home directory here.
I had to drag my home directory from the bottom into the side, so you might have to as well.
Yeah. I think there's also a.
Oh, yep. Yeah, that did it.
Okay, cool. Okay, so now that we're showing our hidden files, let's go back into downloads and open up the Get Setup Master. Although I'm still not seeing.
Hey Johnny, I posted inside the iOS 6 part-time channel. It's like a terminal, or not a terminal, it's a terminal command that you can put in there and it'll actually just show all your files all the time.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so go ahead and do that if yours is not working.
Johnny, don't we need to change the files names to make them be able to be hidden? Because right now these ones obviously aren't hidden, but I think we have to change the file names so they are hidden files.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we're going to do that next.
But once we start changing them, then it should show them as hidden.
So, okay. Yeah, maybe I just need to reword my directions and probably do this part first. Okay, so yeah, let's move on to step 4 here. So let's go ahead and rename our new git config files.
I'm sorry. I'm still trying to catch up. I got stuck because I couldn't find my home directory. You said we had to drag the master file into our home directory folder to open the hidden files?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, so as long as you put in your computer's name, like your short name or whatever in there, and saved that, then you're all caught up.
Okay, so we haven't opened the hidden files yet.
Not yet.
Okay. All right. Next.
Okay, so let's go ahead and rename our new git config files. Okay, so we're going to rename git attributes to .git attributes. Okay, so click on your git attributes, and then if you do another single click on it, it will allow you to rename it. Okay, so we're going to do .git attributes. Okay, and then it says, are you sure you want to use a name that begins with a dot? The system treats items with these names as invisible files. Okay, so we'll go ahead and hit OK, because that's fine. Okay, and let's do the same thing with our git config. Click OK. Okay, we'll do the same with our git hooks. .git hooks. Okay, and then git ignore. .git ignore. And okay. So I think now if we do, okay, there we go. So yeah, now if we do Command Shift period, we'll see that it's showing and hiding. Yeah, so thanks for pointing that out, Rob.
Whenever I try to rename it with a period at the beginning, it says it's reserved for the system.
Okay, well, but it's not letting you like press like OK, like that you do want to do that.
I hit OK and then it just gets rid of the period.
Oh, okay. I think, let's see. So you may just need to, if you can't do this, see the above step for toggling. So maybe try and do Command Shift period again, and then try to rename them.
Okay.
Is that working?
Yeah, that worked. I don't know why. It even gave me a different pop-up prompt.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's probably just because we were hiding the files, and so it wasn't allowing us to like create hidden files because we weren't showing hidden files. So, okay, so now that those are all renamed, and if you like toggle them on and off, now you should see that they're sort of grayed out so that they are, so we know that they are like hidden files. Okay. So now here on step 5, we're going to remove old git config files. Okay, so in a new window, let's navigate to our home directory. Okay, so I'm going to have Finder open, and if I go to File, New Finder window, that will bring us up a new window here. Okay, and then let's go ahead and jump over to our home directory. Okay, and now we want to locate any of the following files. So git attributes, git config, git hooks, and git ignore. Okay. Um, Git. Okay, so I have a git config here.
Yeah, that's the only one I have is git config.
And then I have a git ignore here. Okay, so for any of those, go ahead and remove the period before. And I think that's all that I have.
It would definitely be in the home space there.
What was that?
Would those files definitely be under the home?
Not
name?
necessarily. No, we're just finding any that you may already have because we're going to replace them.
We're just removing the period.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason we do that is so that when we do Command Shift period, we should see those files and be able to delete them.
If you're not doing this sort of thing on your computer, is it likely that you don't have any on your computer?
Yeah.
I don't see any.
Yeah, if you've never done anything with Git before, you probably don't have any.
If you have only one file, is that okay? Same thing? Kind of relates to this question.
Sorry, say that again.
If I only found one for get config, that's the only one I found.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's delete both of those. So I'm just going to drag both of those to my trash here. Okay, so now we're here on the last step, drag in the new git config files. Okay, so we're going to go back to our setup master here. Okay, and we want to drag the following files and folder from this window over to our home directory. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select. And so the way that you can do multi-select is if you hold down Command, go ahead and Command click Git attributes, Git config, Git hooks, and Git ignore. Okay, and then just drag those over to your home directory. Okay, and make sure you're dropping them in the home directory itself, not in one of like its subfolders. Okay, and you can tell by what it's highlighting. So make sure you're not dropping it on one of the highlights for one of the subfolders. Make sure that it's part of the home directory itself. Okay, you guys see that difference? Okay, and then let's have you raise your little zoom hand when you've got it.
So if we get new computers, this recording will be under our training kit forever, right? Is that what I've heard?
I mean, forever is a long time, but yeah.
Johnny, if we do this with using an external hard drive, is it going to make a difference?
You may run into some problems in the future, but I'm not sure exactly what the problems would be at this point because it just sort of depends on your workflow moving forward. Okay, cool. So that's it. Congrats. Git should now properly be set up on your system. Okay, so we've got about 45 minutes left, which will be perfect. I'm going to go ahead and we'll do another quick break here. And then we'll go into actually putting some of the Git stuff into practice.
Yeah, Johnny, Aaron's gonna work with me on this tomorrow on doing all this on my PC.
Okay.
I'm still in the process of trying to find a Mac. Apparently, they're all out of inventory right now. So we'll figure it out one way or another.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. All right, guys, come on back.
What was that?
That was the timer alarm. It's pretty intense.
Yeah, it kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Yeah, usually if I'm not paying attention to the timer and it goes off, like while I'm like looking at something else, it makes me jump. It's so loud. Okay. All right, so let's spend a little bit of time going over terminal, okay? So terminal is like a really nifty way to like sort of navigate and control all aspects of your computer. The terminal, like if there's one thing about like programming that makes me feel like I'm like a hacker, it's typing things in terminal. And that's mostly because it's just the highlighted text and like it sort of looks like you're just making up a bunch of stuff. But I'm going to go through like a few different commands when it comes to using terminal that will hopefully help you navigate. But I'm also going to run this side by side with a Finder window so that you guys can see sort of how terminal is mimicking navigating through like your computer's file system. Okay, so I'm going to open up Finder here.
How do you make the text bigger, like you have on yours?
If you do Command plus and Command minus, we'll change the text size. So I'm going to clear this out. Again, don't pay attention to these things. These are just part of my shell, okay? So I want everyone to, just to make sure that we're all at the same page, I want everyone to just do a CD, okay? Which CD stands for change directory, okay? So CD stands for change directory. And anytime in terminal when you do CD with nothing, it's going to take you back to your home directory, okay? So I'm going to do the equivalent over here in my Finder window. By doing CD, I'm just going to, that's going back to my home directory here. Okay, and I'm actually going to show, I'm going to hide my hidden files now because I don't want to see those. So if you do Command Shift period, that will close those. Okay. Okay, so CD with nothing takes you back to the home directory. Okay. But if you ever want to see like where you currently are, you can type in ls. Okay, and ls will just list out the files that are inside of this directory. Okay, so if you compare what we see here over to my Finder window, you see that they're the exact same. One is just in alphabetical order, right? All right, so app dev with Swift, applications, AR paper toss, etc., etc. Okay, so again, ls is just like giving you a list of all of the files inside of your current directory. Okay, we got that. So CD takes you back to your home directory. LS is list out what's in your current directory.
This is bringing back some memories of MS-DOS back from like 1986 for me.
Yeah, it's pretty old school. Okay. So we're in our home directory, and what you guys are going to need is you're going to need a development folder that you can save all of your projects in, okay? And I want you to do all of this inside of the home directory, because if you do it like on your desktop and you have iCloud Sync turned on for your desktop, Git like gets really messed up, okay? So we want to make sure that we're not setting up our development folder and all of our projects that we're going to be working on. We don't want those to be on our desktop. So let's have them be here in our home directory, but inside of a folder that we'll call development, okay? So the way that we can create a new folder is we can do mkdir, okay, which is make directory, okay? So mkdir. Okay, and then I want everybody to make a development folder. So go ahead and just type in development. And then press enter. Okay, I already have 2 development folders, so I won't do this step with you. Okay, so mkdir for make directory, and then development. Okay, so this is going to be where you're going to save all of your projects, okay? So now if you do another ls, you should see that you now have that development folder, okay? So you just created a new directory called development, okay? So now let's go ahead, and if you ever want to navigate into a directory, you're going to do cd, change directory, and then the folder that you want to navigate to. Okay, so I'm going to do cd development here. Okay. And then again, you can check your whereabouts. You can give yourself more context by doing ls. My guess is you don't have anything in there because you just created the development folder. Okay. But again, let me mimic what I just did over here in a Finder window. So what we did is if I right click and do new folder, that's the equivalent of make directory, right? And then we named it development. And then I did a cd into the development folder, which is just the equivalent of opening that folder. Okay. We all good thus far? Okay, so that takes me back to my home directory. In this case, because I was only 1 level in, but cd ... goes back to the previous directory.
A directory is just like a folder, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Now let me get the... So now that we've got our directory, I'm going to have you do your first cloning of a remote repository. Let me get that for you real quick here. Come on, your repositories here.
Johnny, when you're going into a folder through the terminal, do you have to spell out that folder correctly? Like if, say, you have development spelled with lowercase versus uppercase, like the D, is it case sensitive?
I think depending on your shell, it may be. Mine is not. But I think some shells behave differently. So sometimes you may have to do like the exact like case sensitive spelling. Okay. So inside of my development folder, let's go ahead and let's make another folder. Okay. So I'm gonna make a directory here, and we're gonna call this about me. Okay. So make directory about me. Okay. So again, if you do ls, you can see now we have a directory called about me. Okay. So let's go ahead and go to that directory. So cd about me.
Are we making the about me folder inside the development?
Yes. Yeah.
Folder?
Okay, and then what I want to do is I want my about me repository to be a Git repository, okay? So again, when I'm making just a normal folder, a repository, a Git repository, it means that I'm going to add tracking to it, okay? So that I can track changes that have been made inside of that folder over time, okay? So the way that I can initialize that directory or that folder to be a Git repository is I'm going to do git init, okay, which just is initialize a Git repository. Okay, so git init. Okay, so we initialized an empty Git repository in users Johnny Hicks development about.
Are we doing, what does that do?
So that's setting up the folder for tracking. Okay, so we're initializing a Git repository. So now any changes that are made, files that are added, files that are deleted, code that's added to those files is going to be tracked by my Git repository. So it's going to track every single change that's made so that I can make commits to it over time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you want us doing that within the about me folder or the about me or the?
Yeah, inside of the about me folder.
Is it okay that that last line saying master plus didn't pop up on my side here?
Yep, that's just part of my my shell. Okay, so because a Git repository has been set up, now we have begun tracking our project, okay? So at any given time, if you want to see the changes that have been made since your last commit or since the repository was initialized, you can do a git status, okay? Git status, okay? So we can see what branch I'm on. So I'm on my master branch. No commits have been made yet, and I have nothing to commit. Okay, so I've initialized the repository, but I haven't made any changes yet. So I'm set up to track any changes, but I have not yet made any changes to my folder yet. Okay.
So this will just let you upload what you're working on directly from this window instead of going online and uploading all your work.
Well, yeah, there are a few steps to getting it to connect to a remote repository, which we'll go over. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's create a file inside of our About Me folder. Let's do, we're going to do touch readme.md, which is just going to be a markdown file. Okay. And again, I'll show you what's happening over in the Finder window here. Okay, so now we're at the point of, we're inside of this About Me directory, right? There's currently nothing in changes. Okay, so I can toggle those on and off. Command Shift period. Okay.
And what does touch? What does touch do? We didn't see that.
Touch is going to create a file of the given file type. So this is going to be a markdown file. If you did like readme.txt, it would create a txt file. Okay. So let's go ahead and do touch readme.md. Me folder inside of, or there's a README document inside of the About Me folder. Okay, so again, I've added a file here. So let's go ahead and do a git status and see if our changes are being tracked. Okay. You're on your master branch. No commits have been made yet, but you have an untracked file. Okay. So it's saying there's now a new file that's that's inside of your Git repository or inside of your folder, but you have not added it to be a tracked file yet. Okay, so right now it's not tracking any changes that would be made to the README file. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to stage those changes. Okay, so I'm going to do a git add. Okay, and this tells you exactly what to do, right? Git add and then the file name. Okay, so we can do git add readme.md. Okay, so now if I do another git status, we see that it's tracking, now it's tracking that it has a new file and that there are changes that are ready to be committed. Okay, is everyone with me thus far? Okay, you guys are going to be I realize this is a lot. Like I hated learning terminal when I first started. I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't know any of the syntax. I don't understand what it's doing. I mean, hopefully seeing me do this side by side with the Finder window is helping you get a little more context about what's going on. But like, really, this is just going to take practice, okay? And we'll go through like doing a number of different commits, probably more so on, or I guess next week on Monday. We'll go through all this whole process again, but I'm going to go through like kind of the full process of creating the directory, adding the Git repository, connecting it to a remote repository, etc. Okay. All right. So the README file is ready to be committed. Okay. So I can go ahead and we can do a Git commit, which again is just taking a snapshot of my repository at this current point in time. Okay. So I'm going to do git commit -m. Every commit requires a commit message, and that's just for you as a developer to know like what changes this commit has. What is this snapshot per se actually doing? Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to say added README file. Okay, opening and closing quotes. And then press enter. Okay, so now we see that has been committed. Okay, so if I do a get status again, we have nothing to commit, right? So we've taken a snapshot of all of the changes that were made, which was adding that markdown file, and now we've committed them. So now we have no changes that have been made since our latest commit. Okay. So I'm going to open up that MD file that we created. Okay. And it is marked down, so I can do about me here. We'll say my name is Johnny Hicks. Swift is really cool. I really enjoy going to Lambda school. Okay, so we've made a bunch of changes to my markdown file. So now if we do a get status here, we see that changes have been made to the readme.markdown file, but the changes need to be staged for committing. Okay.
Real quick question.
Yep.
When we did the git commit -m and then added that in quotations added README file, where does that added README file text go? Is that I didn't really get what that was or what that was.
Yeah. So if you do a git log, that will show you a log of all of your commits.
So it's just sort of a note for your
a note for yourself about like what that commit was.
It's not necessarily affecting the file or the actual README text. Okay, gotcha.
No. Okay, so again, we do a get status. We see that we have changes that have not been staged. Okay, so again, it's telling you in order to stage those to be committed, you need to do a git add. Okay, and so you can do a git add or file name, or if you just want to stage everything, you can do git add period. Git add period. Okay, so that will stage everything. So now if I do a get status, we see that those changes are ready to be committed. Okay, well, what if I want to look at the changes before I commit them and make sure that they're right? Okay, that's where I can do a get diff, which just says, show me the differences. Let's see. I might need to. Let's actually do a get diff before we stage the changes. Figure out how to unstage. Git reset. Yeah, so I actually use a GUI a lot more than I care to admit. Okay. Okay. So now, sorry, before we actually stage those changes, I'd want to verify that they're the right kind of changes. So I'll do a get diff. Okay, and then a git diff will show me all of the things that have been added to that file. Okay, so now I see all of the text that's been added. Okay, so I'm good to go ahead and stage all of that. So we'll do git add period, and then let's do one more commit, git commit added introduction for self. Okay, and then we'll commit those changes. Okay, should I walk through that process one more time? Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so let's go back to our README file. Let's make a few more changes. Here I am making a few more changes. I want to commit these and then push them up to a remote repository. Okay, so go back to terminal. Okay, so first step, you can do a git status to see changes that have been made, or you can do a git diff to actually get a list of the changes that have been made. Those two are optional. You can do a git status and a git diff if you want. You don't have to. Those are just clearly for like observatory purposes, if you are in like inspection purposes, if you want to check to verify that the changes that have been made are indeed what you'd expect them to be. Okay.
Yep.
So
Johnny.
yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry to cut you off. I was gonna ask, if you catch something that you want to change here in the terminal, do you have to go to the actual file, like the README file, and make the changes there, or can you make the changes in the terminal?
That will be the easiest way to do it. It's just go into the file and make the changes there. Okay, so yeah, so if you're taking notes, you can put git diff and git status into like the optional commands. Okay. Okay, but there are three. Well, we'll say for now there are two like required things that you have to do to commit your changes. Okay, that's git add period, which just means stage the changes, and then git commit -m added some more text. Okay, so git add period and git commit -m. Those are the two required. So git status and git diff optional. Git add period and git commit are required in order to make a commit.
So I made my changes. How I'm still not seeing the change on the terminal right now. So I edited the note. How do I see the changes again? I'm sorry. Would you show it one more time?
So how do you see the changes that you made in terminal?
So I changed the note, but I didn't go through the process of checking for the change, and I didn't see anything on there. So would you just show that one more time?
Okay, so if you do a git, here, let me make another change here. Okay, so do a git status, okay? Do you see something like this that says that your README file has been modified?
I think you're muted.
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, what are you seeing right now?
It says on master branch or on branch master, nothing to commit, working tree clean.
Okay, so
yeah, mine says the same thing.
Made any changes since your latest commit? So it sounds like you already committed your changes.
Okay.
So go to your markdown file and make some more changes to it.
And do you have to save that file to for it to pick up the changes?
Yeah. Yeah, if you do a Command S. Sometimes it depends. Some applications will save automatically. I'm not sure about Xcode's markdown files if it does it automatically or not.
That fixed it. I just didn't save it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so save the changes. And so you can do a get status to see a list of the files that have been changed. And then if you actually want to see the changes themselves, you can do a get diff, and that will show whatever text you added to your markdown file.
Nice. That was it. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, so let's go ahead and stage it and commit it. Okay, and so that's all committed. Okay, are you guys getting a good feel on how this is working? So again, the required, you have to initialize a repository through a get init, then you do a get add to add any, or to stage any changes that have been made in your repository, and then a get commit. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get this set up with a remote repository. So let's open up Safari here. And you're gonna go to GitHub. You don't have to go to Safari. You can be in whatever web browser you want to use. Okay, so go to GitHub, log in. Okay, and then once you're there, at the top right, you should see a little plus button. Go ahead and click on that. And we're gonna click on New Repository. Okay, New Repository. So the owner should be yourself. We're going to give this a repository name. I'm going to call this About Me, iOSPT6. Okay. I'm not going to give it a description. I'll make this a public repository. Please, please make sure to uncheck initialize this repository with a README, or you're going to have conflicts. Uncheck this box. Okay, because we've already initialized our repository with a README locally, so I don't want to do that on the remote. Okay, so uncheck that, and then you're going to hit Create Repository. Okay. Okay, so if you were afraid of terminal, you don't need to be afraid anymore, because this tells you exactly what to do now. This gives you line by line exactly what to do. So what we want to do is we want to push an existing repository from the command line. Remember, we've already created a repository, so we just simply want to push that up to GitHub. So these are the steps. You can actually copy these. So just highlight, copy them, or you can click this little clipboard button, which will add it to your clipboard. Go to terminal, and then hit paste. Okay. So again, what this is doing is it's adding a remote origin for your repository. So it's creating that connection between your local repository and between a remote repository. Okay, and then we're pushing our changes up to the remote. Okay, if this is your first time, you probably haven't authenticated GitHub. So as soon as you press enter right now, it's probably going to ask you to put in your GitHub username and password inside of terminal. So go ahead and do that, and then it should push your changes up. Okay, so once you've successfully pushed, let's have you raise your little Zoom hand. Okay, we all good?
Sorry, Johnny. Just putting in my password right now. Kind of make this complex one.
Okay.
It's really handy that they have the copy and paste there.
Yeah.
Hey Johnny, if it doesn't let me put in my password, what am I doing wrong? So I put in my username for GitHub, but then it
Yeah,
just has
so
a
the password, it is taking your input. You just can't see that it's inputting anything. So just put in your password and press enter.
gotcha. Okay.
Bizarre.
Yep. Okay, so once you've got that, once you've successfully pushed, you should see information that says, hey, like we've successfully pushed all of your changes up. Okay, so now if we go back into GitHub and I refresh this page, look at that. There's our README right there. Okay, we've got our README markdown file here, about me, my name, and all of the gibberish text that I wrote. Okay. And you can see some more information about this repository. Right now, it currently just has one branch, the master branch, and you can get a list of your branches here. If you click on branch here, we see that we have a master branch. Okay, I can actually look at my commits here. I have 4 commits. So my commit history, I can click on that. And then those things that we put in our commit message, here's that log, right? Added README file, added introduction for self, added some more text, added some more text again. Okay, and you can go in and you can view those changes as well. Okay, so now we've made this connection. We've got a remote repository, we've got a, and then we also have our local repository, and now they're connected. So anytime now that I make changes, okay, let's make one more change for GitHub. Okay, I'm gonna save that, git add period. Git commit -m, added some GitHub text. Okay, anytime we commit, remember that committing is only saved to your local repository. Okay, so now I need to do a git push again. Okay, and now we see that that change has been pushed up to GitHub.
Hey Johnny,
Yeah.
I don't see the about me, so I guess I'm stuck where it says git push you origin master. Am I supposed to push it up still, or?
Yes. Yeah, if you haven't pushed it up, you need to do that.
And how do you do that again?
Let's see. So have you done your like initial push?
I don't think so.
Okay. So yeah, so for your, so did you do the get remote add piece right here?
Yes.
Okay. So then after that, you're going to do get push -u origin master.
And once you do that, does it automatically get pushed to GitHub?
Well, not automatically because you did a get push, right? So that's you doing it manually. It's, I mean, even though you copied and pasted it, you're the one that's initiating the push. But yeah, so later, if you go and make changes and you do a git commit, remember, you still have to push those changes up. A commit only commits it on your local repository. In order to get those changes up to the remote, you have to push them up. Okay, so let's say that I'm on GitHub, and let's pretend our friend Ada, she actually has a copy of my repository, and she makes some changes to this README. So I'm going to make these changes like right on GitHub. Here's Ada making some trouble by making some changes. Okay, so I'm going to actually just commit those changes directly on GitHub. Okay, so I've got all, so you can see here, we've got this, here's Ada making some trouble by making some changes on this about me, but on my on my local repository, I don't see that. What do I need to do in order to get the changes that Ada has made to my remote repository?
Pull.
I need to pull, right? So let's go ahead and do a get pull. Okay, and here's our file that now has the text from Ada. Okay, so we're just about out of time. So Samira or one of the other TLs, if you guys want to post the homework, those of you that need to bounce like right at 9:30, you're welcome to get off. That's everything that I have for this lesson today, but I'm happy to stay after to help whoever has questions or if anyone needs help getting things set up. But let's go back to our, real quick, let's go back to our learning objectives for today. And there may be some learning objectives that I'll have to cover on Monday because we didn't have time to get to them. Okay, but here they are. So understand and explain version control. Configure a Git identity and default editor on a computer. So we added TextMate. We didn't talk about forking, but we did talk about cloning a remote Git repository, committing and writing good commit messages. I mean, our commit messages were pretty lame, but we do want to make sure that we have good commit messages so that if we ever need to go back to a specific commit, we can do so. Okay, learn to push changes to a remote Git repository and then create a pull request. Okay, so we'll do those next week, the create a fork and create a pull request. If it is required for your homework, which it actually might be, your TLs will be able to lead you, to guide you through work and how to create a pull request. Okay, if they don't get to that, I'll talk about it next week, but I want to be respectful of your guys' time. I know it's late, so we'll go over that next week. Okay, all right, so for those of you that want to bounce, you're free to go. We'll see you next week, and then I'm happy to stay and answer any questions anybody has.
Thanks, Johnny.
Yeah, we'll see ya.